Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
And we want to welcome Alex from Canada, who will be, maybe we're having more than one meal here because he's been in the kitchen for quite a long time. So let's see what he has prepared. We want to thank you, Alex, for your continued dedication, delivering this knowledge in the shape and the fashion that your soul leads you to deliver it in. So you're opening our eyes to many things and many understandings. So we do thank you very much for continued to be here and continued sharing. And of course, it's practice for when we go out into the universe, I'm sure, that we'll be replicating what Alex is doing and the others. As Mr. Kesh said, the message, the messenger, and the creator will all be one as we deliver this message. But welcome, Alex, and let's hear what you have cooked up for us, so to speak. Plasma cooking, that is.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you everybody for coming to the North American meeting here. And as we all know, the North American meeting includes Central America and South America, and by the way, the rest of the world. And that's what makes this meeting so extremely powerful and relevant. And this is one of the challenges that we have as we're trying to bring the teachings of Mr. Kesh forward. So today is the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings on Plasma Science. And we have advanced to the advanced inner space. And yes, we're going to be talking about our sweetheart. And my name is Alexander. Yes, I am from Canada, and it is February the 26th, 2023. And so this is part of the North American Kesh Foundation Plasma Education Series. And so thank you all for staying with us here. We're trying to shorten up the teaching because we have over 6,000 hours in our archives. And so how do we do that? And so we try every week to try and make it relevant for newcomers and also for the mature students. And so we have to keep moving forward. And so as we've gone through the various teachings in inner space, and we find that is also coming from a series of lectures in teaching, understanding, knowing, insight, and of course, Earth space. And we're now in the advanced section of it because we have to move forward. But please understand, it's only basic. It's very basic because we're still searching for outer space. We're still trying to understand the 3 books of Mr. Kesh, book number 1, The Universal Order of Creation of Matters. And we see the source, how it comes together with the antimatter, dark matter, and the matter state. And then, of course, what's our position with respect to the soul and the origin of the universe, as it's outlined in book number 3. But there is this connection in between, which is the book number 2, The Structure of the Light. And that is the link for us. And it's how we got here. And where we got here was this little tiny sentimental pie in the sky that we call Earth. And it's in kind of this corner of the universe. And then we see, well, there's a lot of stuff out there. And so it's remarkable that we could hit this. We were very good at target practice, and we all came to this Earth. And this Earth position is very location specific. Not only is it located between the planets, but it's located between the planets within the solar system. And there are other solar systems. So, we've done a pretty good job. And the thing is, we now see this, but before we got here, we couldn't see this. So we had to be tuned in somehow. And so that's the question, which broadcast channel are you tuned into? But we ran into some anomalies here. So when we looked at the surface to volume ratios, and we've seen how we have two feeding dimensions, but lately we've come across the anomaly that 1 and 1 not only makes more than 2, but the 1 and 1 are not the same one. You could say that 1 is 1 and the other one is a plus 1. Or we could say that the 1 and the 1 are two feeding dimensions. So you have 1 and you have 2. And so when those two create another dimension, that's the feedback dimension. But all three of these are feedback dimensions to our dimension, which we are the observers. So we are none of these three dimensions. We're in another dimension, and we're trying to find out where exactly we are. But what is very important to understand is that when we look at these physical manifestations within the solar system, and so when we line up all these planets in one row here, and we understand that there's the physical manifestation derives from the plasmatic manifestation, the fact of the matter is that the sun broadcasts to the entire pie, not this little tiny piece of the pie where we have landed on Earth. And when we say we have landed on Earth, well, there are other planets. And even collectively, all these planets together still make this very, very small piece of the pie. And that's a small piece of, let's face it, this very large pie that comes from the sun. And so this is our little sweetheart place, our little sweetie pie. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because you see that the thing about it is when we're looking at the limitations with respect to our position on Earth, we talk about time and we talk about distance, and we've been over these math equations so many times. The thing is, it's always measured in light years, and that's kind of strange, because we go to sleep every night and we hurt ourselves and we heal ourselves, and it's really a good thing it doesn't take light years, because it seems we only have so many years. So really, all that does is it proves the failure of the nuclear science. And so, but the plasma science has to transcend these limitations. And so these limitations are man-made. Man-made is part of the man space, and this man space is part of the Earth space. But what we're looking at is at the universe space, and that is bound to the ethos, which involves morality, compassion, and courage, all attributes of creation. So not only are the attributes of creation of the universe, but they are the attributes of the creation of man space and Earth space, and all the other spaces in between. And the proof of this concept is because we had a preference and sentimentality to Earth. We weren't born on Mars. Well, maybe we want to go to Mars for entertainment, for adventure, for travel, but we chose to come to Earth. And when did we make that choice? And how did we get here? we also had to choose a way of getting here, right? It's like you go on holidays, where are you going? And then once you decide where you're going, how are you going to get there? You're going to walk? Are you going to fly? You're going to go by boat? Or are you going to go by rocket ship? And so we find that we were all born into this inner space of Earth, and we came here without a rocket. So the thing is that we wanted to come here. So it was really an emotional decision. Well, how did that emotional decision come to be? And so we find that when we go to sleep at night, our soul likes to go traveling. And the thing is, it comes back in the morning. And just the way that we were born and just the way that we had that specific planet positioning, we come back to our man space. And so what we need to understand is how we can get back to nature, because everything we're doing is getting away from that. And so there are many ways that we can assess this connection. So the primary thing is that we see that there is a field that is governing this planet. And so that is within the magnetosphere. And so we have a peace dome and we have an inner core. And these are the residences of the soul of the earth body and the soul of the earth, respectively. And we seem to sit in this biosphere range, which is kind of in between. And we try and figure out, how come we don't function the way the earth functions? Well, we resolved that anomaly a few weeks ago when we found that the cells function the way the earth functions. And so the key point is gravitational stability. Gravitational stability allows the world to go around. And so when we look at the manifestation, that is exactly what it is when you see that the plasma feeding leads to a manifestation. So the difference between the launch point and the target field is this gravitational stability. And so that could be a manifestation, but that manifestation can be tangible or non-tangible, visible or non-visible. And so what that means is that there is a plasmatic reality and a physical reality. But the thing that drives it is this emotion of presence, because the emotion of presence manifests itself as well into some kind of reality. And that reality is therefore is a form artifact of energy and motion at that manifestation point, wherever that is. And where is that, and how do we decide that? So we see that we decide where we don't want to go, we decide who we are, and then so we pass through this gateway. And this gateway includes a lot of things that maybe we haven't taken into consideration. So there's a plasmatic symbiosis where we see that 1 and 1 is more than 2, right? This is good. So there's a profit there. But we also see that there are different kinds of light, different kinds of rays. And there are PM-TIC rays and X-rays and gamma rays. And so these are things that we cannot see, but they affect us in our plasma dimensions. And so we are just kind of anchored in our physical state because that we can touch and see. But that is really the feedback state to the plasmatic state, which we can't touch and can't see. And so it's the plasmatic state, which is the feeding state. But that affects us right down to our genes. And it affects us all. And so we have common effects. We also have common defects. And then we need to define these defects a little bit more. So let's just deal with the natural things and understand then that when we're searching for outer space, what we're actually saying is that we are here in the physicality, which is a materialization. and we want to go somewhere else in our physicality. Well, that's not the way we were born. And so the new prospect is to dematerialize, go to that new place, and then rematerialize. And so in order to do that, we have to cross over from that transparency point to that manifestation point. And then we have the option with respect to materialization. So when we look at our immediate solar system and we want to conquer that, well, the thing is, we have this feeling that, and our education has reinforced it, that we want to conquer outer space, but we have no proof of outer space, because when we look into our so-called understanding of outer space, it's all physical space. And every space where we're going to is either a launch point or a landing point, and even the in-between spaces are part of the space. And so it remains to be seen how we're going to land on that in-between space. And the only way that we're doing it is with satellites and spaceships. And so we're going to find out next month with our flight tests to the moon. And so what we're talking about is plasma. We're talking about plasma science. And when you're introducing this to someone new, be straight up. It's a kind of energy state. And this is a kind of energy state that helps us understand our Earth space, and it helps our finding our inner space. But our inner space has a sequence, and when we follow that sequence, then we unlock the gateway to this outer space. It's very important. It affects every family on this planet. And if you don't think it's important, well, then don't worry about it, and nothing is important. So what we've been able to gather up so far is that we know that man has an emotion, and we know our physicality definitely has an emotion. But, wherever we are, well, you know what? We want to be there, and that's our emotion of presence. So we're not forcing you to be here to listen to this presentation today. This is a welcome. It's a welcome on my part. It's a welcome on your part. And so there's a mutual respect with respect to that. And then, as a result, there's a predestination and a predetermination through the emotion of position. And this emotion of position is very important to understand, because all of these emotions, they're not physical, but they follow the plasma rules. And that is that energy states can increase or decrease, and the higher energy feeds the lower energy. And so the reference point is, it's a natural creation or it's a natural decay. But remember that a natural decay is also a creation. And how do we know that? As I said, we were born, and we were born to a lower energy state. But in that energy state, we seem to be consuming. Well, there's another energy transfer state, and that is the catalytic or non-consuming energy state. And the best reference for that, of course, is our sun. Our sun comes up every day and gives unconditionally and creates that huge pie in the solar system, of which our planet positions occupy a tiny little point in that pie. And we seem to be very happy with that, because it's a very sweet place to be. Well, yes, it is. And the way we like to transfer energy is we transfer energy within that pie. Well, that is the lowest energy transfer rate. So not only are we at the lowest energy rate, but we're using the lowest transfer rate. And so either way, as you increase energy states, the energy state increases by an order of magnitude, and the transfer rate increases by an order of magnitude as well. And not just one. We never said how many. And we never said how big the field is, but plasma absorbs fields. And we never said what the criteria is, except that the plasma is also a barrier of fields. So it has this duality. And so what is the governing factor? It's the ethos of the universe. And the reason for it is because life wants to live. So when we wanted to understand all of these things, we had to understand about life. And if you say, well, I just want to get rid of my illness, or I just want to get rid of my disability, or I'm having some kind of genetic problem, or I'm having some kind of emotional problem. And so these all have to do with relationships. But, these relationships are part of an overall thing. And that overall thing is that life is for learning. And so the way we learn in life is through a maturing process. And so that's the purpose of life. But now we have to see that it's a purpose of life, our life, man's space, in relationship to Earth space. Because we picked Earth space, didn't we? Or like everything else, it's not your fault, right? You're the one in charge, but it's someone else's fault. So maybe our man space is dictated by the Earth space, right? Or did the Earth space say, well, you know what? We chose you to come here. And so you just tag along like a good little human that you are. But the thing about it is that when we got here, in order to get here, we had to be gravitationally stable. And you want to go to a place that is gravitationally stable. And so this is the key point. The Earth space is a gravitationally stable energy state, and it is bound to the ethos of the universe, which in itself is a very gravitationally stable environment. So we can say that the emotion sometimes is very unstable. And so the emotion becomes a feedback mechanism. But the emotion is also fed. So the emotion can become a process of a process. It is, in fact, a feedback of a feeding byproduct. And we see that when we look at the various energy states in this bottle of Gans. And right in the heart of it, right in the center, we don't see anything. And yet we know that something is there. So what does that mean? And then we have this tremendous push for artificial intelligence. And we really have to understand that artificial is artificial, as in artificial flowers. And when you look at artificial flowers, you see that they're not sentient because they do not grow. And that's the same thing with robots. Robots don't grow. And robots aren't sentient either. They're emotionless. And as such, they are heartless and they are soulless. And someone says, well, if we gather enough of them around, then there will be a herd mentality. Well, the truth is, of course, one stupid robot doesn't gain intelligence by having a gang of 100 stupid robots. Unless we consider stupidity as a kind of intelligence. So the reality is that outer space is not a place. The reality is that outer space is a method of energy transfer. It's energy in motion, and we need to understand that because this is how the universe was created. And in the process, this is how our Earth space and, of course, our man space was created the same way. And so we see it's the coming together of these energy states. And as we see in the cover of book number 1, there are 3 different energy states. all of the different strengths, and they all come together. And as such, they remain in motion. And because they remain in motion, this is positive energy in motion. But the charge isn't the motion of the energy, the charge is the direction of flow. And when you have a direction of flow, you have to go somewhere or come from somewhere. And if you're going to do that, then you have to combine with something. And so we see that energy is a charge in motion and all things work in combination. And do they only work on one energy state, or can we transcend the different energy states? Well, yes, we can. We can do both. And the reason for it is if we understand the magnetical gravitational relationships with respect to charges in motion and how they affect the rotation of the fields, the speed of the rotation, the strength and the direction. And we understand then how energy is emitted and how energy is absorbed. And this is all part of the basic plasma science. And we say in simplistic terms, two forces come together. And so this is the universal harvesting, which we call self-enhancement. So it's a relationship of some source to the individual you. So we didn't specify what's in between, right? You're just choosing your planet. And so when you come to this planet, it has to have the three dimensions for you to come to. So those three dimensions are there. So you're not from those three dimensions. You understand that? Well, there's a lot of other people who, now that they get here, they forget that. And so they continue to seek this energy. They harvest it in the form of loosh, which is they suck your energy. And then they have to maintain that. And that becomes self-consuming. And whether they understand that or not is irrelevant. That's what happens. And so you see something happens on an emotional relationship. And so that relationship is confined to the relation of some individual to the individual you. It kind of tells the universe to mind its own business. So this is an extremely limiting form of energy binding, and energy binding is very important because that's how we get fed. But the thing is, when we make our choices with respect to feeding through lies, cheating, deceit, and deception, we find that this manifests at the expense of others. And so if we are all part of this field, and then we find that we rob from our neighbors, then the field that we're in is suffering. And it's part of our field. So there's something wrong with that picture. If your neighbor is sick, your community is sick. You're part of that community. You're part of a sick community. You could be healthy in that sick community. But you know what? You're just looking at a few relationships. And so when we make these multiple choice questions, when two forces come together, we only look at whether it's flashing or it's glowing or it's glittering or it's blowing up. But, you know, in the end, really, is it profitable? And then when we have this phenomena on this planet where we have a retrograde with respect to our technologies and our civilization, so is someone planning that? And if they're planning that, is that a confidence in losing? Are we playing a game? Or is it a lack of confidence in creation? Like, seriously? Are we creating the absence of bounty? Or is this a lack of gravitational stability? And it all comes about because we get to choose what we account for or what we discount for. And so we could actually say that it's some kind of genetic defect. where did this genetic defect come from? Is it made by the creator? Or is it made by the, well, what's the other one? The Earth space, isn't it? That's the other extreme. Because we're in between somewhere, aren't we? We're the ones who came from the PM ticks, the principal matter, the magnetical feeding, and we came to this planet and we interacted with this planet. So this planet is our feedback. And so that feedback is our field interaction, which we call inertia. And so what are we? Well, we are the convergence of all this matter, the principal matter, the transition matter, and the convergence matter that comes into this conversion of this plasmagen. And that may be a plasmatic reality or a physical reality. And yeah, we do have the choice in that as well. But most of us here today have already made the conversion to physicality. And so we are part of this Magrav condition on the Magrav of Earth. And so we see that there are two kinds of core components. So we see the electron, of course, just like on the cover of book number 1, is looking like a PM tick. It's energy in motion. But then when we look at the atom has an electron. And it has a relationship with the proton. And so the atom itself becomes a ray. But because the atom has the proton, it's gravitational. And because the PM ticks only has the electron, it's magnetical. And then we ask that question, well, is it plasmatic or is it physical? And we need to ask this question because our basic viewpoint of what's going on is with respect to the gravitational stability of our Earth space in the physical realm, in the physical reality. And then we have these gases, these inert gases that kind of don't do anything. But the fact of the matter is, if they did nothing, they wouldn't even exist. So it's not that they don't do anything, it's that they are gravitationally stable. And it's from there that we can either have a positive or negative charge, and then we can either have a plasmatic reality or a physical reality, or we call that choosing a natural creation or a natural decay from that point. And the most effective are the plasma gas molecules, and we're going to talk about that today, because the fundamental principles of the twinity is that the larger field feeds the smaller field. So the larger field of the proton feeds the smaller field of the electron, but there seems to be a balance. Well, that doesn't look very balanced to me, especially when the proton is 1,849 times bigger. And so obviously the proton is feeding the electron because the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. So these are the fundamental principles of plasma science, the attraction and repulsion of magnetical field forces, which we call magnetical and gravitational forces. And they represent a feeding and a feedback. And you have to have the feedback, because how do you know? You have to stop the feeding at some point, right? We don't walk around with a feed bag on our faces all day long. We maybe stop, feed, and then we carry on. So we have choices. And what we have to understand, that we have to have choices as the last man standing. Are you hungry? You make the choice. Are you full? You make the choice. You don't ask your neighbor, or you don't go and ask the people in another continent, should I stop eating now? So you have that choice to turn on and turn off the feeding, and you do this through plasma fields. And you can increase and decrease the strength of these plasma fields, and as such, you can either enhance or diminish your position accordingly. But when we say enhance or diminish, this isn't a competition. This is just a way of binding energy. And so this is how the earth operates. Okay, well, this is good. So in order for the earth to have this binding energy, it has to keep bringing more and more energy in, right? Because the earth is not a catalyst. And as the energy is coming in, it also has to emit. If it doesn't absorb or emit, and it's not either or, it's both at the same time, it just wouldn't exist, just like the inert gases. So there's this magravity feeding dimension, which is the present, and is governed by the emotion of presence. The emotion of presence of the earth, isn't it? But not only, and that's the point. So when we look at the basic exchange of energy, and we see that we go from the neutron to the atom, that in between we have this so-called decay process, which is the creation of the PM tick. And so if you look at the totality of it and then balance off the energy, then we find, oh, now we know what's missing with respect to the energy balance of the electron-proton atom marriage. And now we see the balance. But that still doesn't give us that direction until we get into the star formation, which is all part of the ray launch dimension. And so it is from these fields that we have an emission, and it's to these fields that we have an absorption. And then there's a way to emit and absorb. And this is all done at light speed. And so we didn't say within which energy, which field, or which speed of light. Because the assumption is that in every case, that the reference is the same. The reference is the same, but the value is not the same. This is a key point. Because when we look in our bodies and we see cells, we know with the X-ray that we can see certain things and certain things we can't see. Well, those things that we can't see are still there. So how can we not see things that are there? And so we can only see things that are there, but what is it that we're seeing? Well, we're actually only seeing the melodies, which are in fact a gravitational manifestation. A gravitational manifestation of what? And so we see that there is a communication. And one of the communication channels is this emotion. And so if we look at, like we said, a member of the community is sick, the whole community is sick. So if we have a cancerous cell in one particular organ, and it grows a tumor, which takes up space outside of that organ, that whole organ is considered sick, isn't it? And so the question then becomes, if we've now created a sickness within the organ, will that sickness spread? But the thing is that this communication, whatever created this organ in the first place, somehow has been disrupted. And so let's forget about the organ and we just look at the cancer. And so we see that this cancer is actually created by this unseen communication stability. Well, who created this stability? And is this stability isolated to this one cell? Or will it actually go to other cells? Or as one person said to me that they were perfectly healthy except for that little bit of diabetes that they had. Is that really possible? that you just have a little bit of diabetes? So somewhere, along the way, we have identified 4,000 different varieties of cancer. And they're all created by the same thing, a disruption of stability. And so the thing is that they manifest themselves differently in different people, because everyone has their type of emotional communication. And that emotional communication created the individual cells in the first place. But before we created that, we created amino acid. And so if you remember from a previous class, we find that nitrogen and hydrogen have a kind of a gaseous affinity, where the hydrogen is magnetical and the nitrogen is the facilitator. And then you look at the carbon and the oxygen, and it's more of an earthbound gas state, where carbon is the connector and the oxygen is gravitational. But what we didn't see, was it plasmatic or was it physical? In other words, that is to say, if we're referencing these particular elements, are we referencing them in the physical reality or the plasmatic reality? And so we find that our soul, which has a certain field strength, and within that field strength, we have this bandwidth where we can isolate this precision targeting. We call it the GPS of the plasma of the soul. And so within our body, our soul is anchored in the blood. But as we said before, we didn't say which soul. And so that becomes another question. Which soul is it? The soul of the man, the soul of the body, or the soul of the cells? And so we find that each one of these has some kind of relationship to the emotion of presence, and that is based on the emotion of position. So the emotion of position would take priority, and once we ascertain the emotion of position, then we can determine the emotion of presence, and then we can exercise our target practice and hit the target. So when we look at the beginning matter, we said, jokingly, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And really, neither of them, because they're both in physicality, so they're both part of the feedback system. So first came the principal matter in the form of a plasma matter. So really, the question is, which came first in the physical matter, if we want to play that game? And so the game was, well, the heart preceded the brain. And so along with the heart, the blood materialized as well. And the unique characteristic is that the blood passes throughout the body, but it goes around the brain. So the brain is encapsulated in the blood vessels, whereas the blood vessels are encapsulated within the body. And so there's a crossover there. And so what is the relationship between the heart and the blood? And so this is affecting our communication, isn't it? Because our communication, if it's based on the emotion, is really based on the heart. But our brain has emotion as well. But in terms of being born in the womb, the heart precedes the brain. So there's a sequence here. And that sequence is exemplified by the fact that we can't remember before we were born. We can't remember after we were born. And there are other problems that we have with our memory. So all of these are commentary on our brain function. But hey, sweetheart, do you remember me? You better, because we're here. And when we go to sleep at night, we seem to come back. And we don't seem to be conscious in how we do that. And so the question then becomes is who's minding the fort when we leave? And then if it's the brain, well, who's minding the brain? And, you know, all these questions come to mind and we say, well, we don't know the answer to that. You know, maybe when we get up in the morning, we'll kind of figure it out. Well, the thing is that there's an inner space field. And from that center of that field is this inner space point, and it emits out. And that becomes part of the feeding radiance. But that feeding radiance is also becomes part of the feedback radiance. What is the difference? If there is no difference, then what's the point of feeding? So clearly, if we're feeding, we're not feeding enough because we're at the lowest energy level. And if we're feeding back, then we need to supplement more. And so this is the difference between the plasmatic manifestation and the physical manifestation. So when we talk about energy and matter, we find that matter itself only occupies a definite part of space at a definite moment in time. And so if we relate matter to energy, then we find that it cannot be in two places at the same time. How can we be here and plan to be there if we can't be in two places at the same time? So therefore, what we're not talking about is the same increment of energy. We're talking about energy in motion. The energy that's emitted and the energy that's absorbed is not the same energy. Cannot be. It interacts. It keeps going. And as such, it has a constitution, has a flavor, has a field strength, and has a purpose. Many other factors as well. And the thing about it, you know, when we talk about artificial intelligence, well, you know, look at this, these stupid Atlanteans. How come, you know, we're so smart and they're so stupid, and here they have in their artwork representation of the 64 codons of the DNA and the RNA. Well, wait a second. We've just started to explore this. And here, thousands of years before, they already were putting it in the artwork. They obviously seem to understand that and the relationship with the seasons. And it was accurate then, it's accurate now. And they didn't do this in books, they did it in the clothing. And so now when we investigate, oh, we see the RNA. And so we understand that the RNA is part of the feeding radiance of the inner space spectrum. And so the DNA is the adaptation of the earthbound energies. And so that becomes the feedback radiance of the inner space spectrum. So let's review something that we started a long time ago, and that's to look at the creation of protein. So we find that there's a relationship between being unstable and being simplistic. And as we graduate to being, the more stable we are, we have to be more complex. So this is how we achieve gravitational stability. So when we look at the sequence of protein creation, we see that we start with the amino acids, create the DNA, then the fatty acids. Oh, there's the protein. And from the protein, we create the cells. And then we have more complex cells. Okay, so now we see the path. Okay, so this is good. But there's other things that affect this path. And we've identified that as the pH observations. So we see that saturated fat, for instance, is very acidic, and we see that ammonia is very alkaline. And so we know that oil and water do not mix, but it's interesting that the highly alkaline water will emulsify the fat. And so it will mix. And so isn't that interesting? And then we find that the nanostate is created from the high alkalinity, and the carbon is the connector. The connector to what? So we're going from this high alkalinity of NH3. NH3 is ammonia. So this was all in the basic teachings when we started. So the thing about the pH, which is the potentiation of hydrogen, is that it affects communication, because how the DNA and the RNA operates is based on the communication of all these codons and the sequencing thereof. And we find that the actual conformity of the DNA changes with the pH. So if it becomes overly alkaline, it shrinks, and if it becomes overly acidic. And we know that because when you do a post-mortem, the DNA is flat. There is no helical coil. So when we look at these fatty acids and how they progress, we saw that they combine at the heads and then they have hydrophobic tails. And this is how not only the skin of our body, but the skin of the cells are also formed the same way. And so when we look at the cross section, we find that the tails are tail to tail. Well, wait a second. If the tails are magnetical and common poles repel, there's a problem here. How do we maintain this gravitational stability of this skin layer, which is this transition layer that's in between the inside and the outside? How do we do that? And so we find that this gravitational stability has to be there because we have the convergence of two magnetical forces. So if we look at the other thing with the protein, the amino acids are the building blocks, and 3 amino acids form the foundation. Now, if we add a fourth one, the amino acids have to fold over. This is how you make protein. In the process of making protein, you also make water. And so we find the protein has a gravitational stability, well, so does the water. But we're talking about our sweetheart here. And so this affects the sequencing with respect to energy transfer. And so the currency of life on this planet is adenosine triphosphate, which we call ATP. And we have 3 levels in the Krebs cycle. And in each cycle, we have the production of 12 ATP, and we get this from one simple food molecule. And from this one molecule, we can create these 36 ATP and create a very healthy cell. Thank you very much. However, if we get into an unhealthy sequence, we have a deficiency in this intermediate row, this central point. And this deficiency is an unhealthy cell condition of 26 ATP being produced. We are more than one brick short of a load here. We're a whole bunch short. And so what's causing this? And so when we look at the plasmatic air, we see that the Earth is made mostly of nitrogen. And we see the PM ticks are made basically of hydrogen, which is electron-proton combination. We also call that an atom. And when that comes together as NH4, we see that there's no carbon or oxygen in that marriage. But when we look at the amino acid content, we are adding carbon and oxygen to the hydrogen and nitrogen, right? So we, in fact, not only have the plasmatic nitrogen, but we have the plasmatic hydrogen. And then we also have the plasmatic amino acid, which is derived from these. Is there a difference between the plasmatic amino acid and the physical amino acid? Well, yeah, you betcha, because when we look at the Gans effect, we see the exact same thing, which I'm talking about. Some of the Ganses are oxidized, such as the copper oxide, zinc oxide, carbon dioxide, and they affect our muscles and our mood, our health. But some may not be oxidized. We call it CH3 gas, iron. It's the creation of blood. And it's universal type. The blood is essential for the body and the heart. We already talked about that. But the thing is, no oxygen. And so what does that mean, sweetie? Well, it has to do with sugar. And the reason is because when we look at an aerobic metabolism, which involves oxygen, that's considered healthy. But when we go into an anaerobic metabolism, we call it unhealthy. Anaerobic meaning without oxygen. Both references are to oxygen. And the key factor is sweetness. And so when we look at the heart and its sweetiness, we need to dig deeper and look inside. And so we see what happens to the sweetness because of the pH. So we see that the sweeter it is, the more flatline the DNA is. The more flatline it is, the less oxygen in the blood. And the less oxygen in the blood, the less energy. But wait a second. The CH3 is sugar. So all this has to do with relationships, as we said. And so what we're trying to do is bridge this relationship between the scientific responsibility and the spiritual responsibility. And so what we are really talking about is the plasma science, because it's adding to the knowledge. And so then the question becomes, at what rate of change? Well, for some reason, our planet is not getting healthier, and we're having problems. And so we find that there's a strong emotional impact on this. And so when we're looking at this transition point, which is in between the plasma reality and the physical reality, and back to the plasma reality, we see the limitation is actually on the soul level. So what we're seeing is the after effect, the feedback effect of the emotional limitations. And so these emotional limitations, shall we say, are victims of the energy feeding packs. So we have to ask ourselves, what kind of energy are we feeding? Maybe we need to ask, what kind of energy are we robbing? But the truth of the matter is, these energy feeding packs are gravitationally stable. And as such, they contribute to our gravitational stability. And so as far as man space is concerned, gravitational stability is health. And as far as Earth space stability, gravitational stability of Earth space is concerned, it's bountiful. And so when we look at the periodic table of elements, yeah, we talked about the amino acids, but we looked at the Earth, it has silicon. And then we look at the man space and we talk about zinc being the emotion, the copper being the physicality, and the iron being the connector, the anchorage in our blood, if you will. And then we look at the environment, the sodium, the magnesium, the potassium, and the calcium. We'll find how important the calcium is because the calcium is in every cell in our body. But we know that calcium sometimes can be soft, and then calcium can be hard. So before we get there, let's just review this periodic table of elements and understand, as we said before, for convenience sake, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen are really a gathering of hydrogens. And so for convenience sake, you don't call carbon hydrogen 6 or nitrogen hydrogen 7 or oxygen hydrogen 8. And then when you have 3 amino acids in the chain and they fold over, then something else happens. So this becomes quite complex. So we have to look at how nitrogen converts to oxygen. So simple math says if you add a hydrogen to the nitrogen, you would get oxygen, which is hydrogen 8. But if you subtract a hydrogen from the nitrogen, that becomes the carbon, hydrogen 6. And you see how important the nitrogen is. It's 81% of the atmosphere. Okay. And then how we operate, we breathe oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. In this process, gee, hydrogen is missing. What's going on? So when we look at the amino star, we find that the hydrogen component is very, very important. And so we look at the base of the carbon, the nitrogen, and the oxygen as being extremely stable. So it's gravitationally stable. And the hydrogen is, by definition then, magnetically stable. And so that is the composition of the amino star. And if we look at the gravitational stability, and then we look at the magnetic stability, and we compare that to that of the atom, we find a similar relationship in terms of size and field strength between the proton and the electron. And so therefore, we find that to have gravitational stability, and the oxygen is very gravitationally stable, we find that all the protons are in the center and all the electrons are on the outside. And so this makes not only oxygen very gravitationally stable, but highly reactive. And what makes it really reactive is when we add a couple more hydrogens to it. In other words, we add some water. And so we've always asked how we can get 2 hydrogens to create this water, and how do these 2 hydrogens balance out this big fat oxygen? And so somehow, some way, we find that it has to be in a maggrav state. So by doing the math, we figure out, well, we look at the oxygen as having 16 electrons and 8 neutrons. And then we add 2 hydrogens to it, right? But if we look at the oxygen with the 2 fields of hydrogen, now it becomes a water gas. So let's review. Oxygen always has a partner. And oxygen has a double bond. And so when we look at 2 oxygens coming together, very, very gravitationally stable. Now, when we look at nitrogen, we find that it too is gravitationally stable. It comes in pairs. And it likes to combine with the hydrogen. And so we have this NH3. And so when we look at the whole fields coming together, it has to be gravitationally stable and has to be balanced as a maggrav. So when we look at replacing that nitrogen with carbon, that carbon becomes CH3. Same format, same conformity, it's gravitationally stable. And CH3 is sugar. And we need it. It's full of energy. Lots and lots of energy. And then when we look at the water molecule and we add the extra hydrogen, something doesn't fit here because the water molecule itself is round. So when we're looking at the gravitational stability of the oxygen bond, we have to finish off the whole picture by making the water molecule round. So we have to introduce another, well, at least 3 more pairs. But what I want to talk about is this carbon dioxide, because the carbon links up with 2 oxygen and it's heavier than air. And as such, it's lethal in physicality. And it is very, very gravitationally stable. And so what does that mean? Well, as a solid, being very stable, that's on a physical plane. But as a gas, it's on an emotional plane. And as a plasma gas, carbon dioxide is life-giving. What? And we find that our body is actually a Gans spaceship. So now we see that when we look at the various organs in our body, we find that there are organs that have a special affinity to the emotions. And so we see that the 2 primary organs, the brain and the heart, well, there's some kind of plasmatic manifestation which drives them. Everything else in the body is kind of a physical manifestation, isn't it? But the thing is, our whole man space is a physical materialization. And so everything that connects here is something that is unseen on the communication side of it. And because of the physical materialization, there's an unseen communication stability. And the same thing applies to the Earth space. The Earth space has an unseen communication stability as well. And that's a good thing, because we want to have our feet firmly planted on a stable ground. So when we look at the cups of life, what we've taken is the physical elements and we've created this Gans. So here we are at the lowest energy level and we've created Gans, which is at a higher energy level. So life is not just where the higher feeds the weaker in terms of the plasma feeding the physicality, but here we've created a system where we can take the physicality and convert it into a plasma. Something is not adding up. Where does that come from? And then on top of that, we get this calcium Gans and this amino acid and this water and this sweetness, this heartbeat. Where does it come from? It has to come from the PM ticks, the feeding rates. And so we've created our emotional soul, our physical soul, and the soul of the man. And we put it together. And that's our man space. But when we look at the 5-cup system, here's what we see. Cup number 1 and cup number 2 have a plasmatic manifestation. Cup number 3 and cup number 4 have a physical manifestation, number 4 being an inertia cup. And we have this anchorage in the physical anchorage of our man space on the earth space, which involves zinc, the emotion, the copper, the physicality, and the iron, that sweet blood. And so we see the cup of inertia as being the combination of the cup of man and the cup of the earth. And the cup of the earth involves the zinc, the iron, and the copper, which are the key components of the CH3, which forms the sugar that we need. Well, if the sugar is what we need for life, then how come excess sugar makes us unhealthy? And so we find that if it's in sequence, we create a complete picture. If it's out of sequence, then we have a problem. And so somehow we started with this NH4, and we see the relationship between methane, which is a CH4, and we see the hemoglobin, which is a iron oxygen 4. And so these are star formations, but they're actually somehow they become this anomalous pyramid, which includes calcium. So our star formation 3 on the gravitational stable plane, and the hydrogen on the magnetical stable plane has one more added to it. So how does that work? And so we find that there's a dynamic plasma interaction with the PM ticks coming. So in order to maintain this MAGRAV condition, energy has to come and energy has to go. And so in order for this energy to come in, it has to be gravitationally stable on its own. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. So we have one gravitational stable PM tick coming into this gravitationally stable anomalous pyramid. Well, we have 2 hemispheric rotating fields with respect to the Earth, and yet we have this one physical Earth-space rotation. So that is a representation of the manifestation of a gravitational stability. And so that has to be stable in the center. But when we look at the principal interaction of energy and motion, and we say we have twin suns, and we'll talk about that more another time, but the point is it's a two-way street. And so this path down this street is one of equality. But when you look at the sun relationship to the earth, it doesn't seem to be very equal. When you look at the relationship of the proton and the electron, doesn't seem to be very equal. So we have to choose the equality reference point, because that's not it. And so what we have to look at is, how do we converge this dynamic transfer state and then diverge into another manifestation state? So we have to go through this point of conversion, and that point of conversion will be gravitationally stable. But if we bring these head to head, we are basically bringing the 2 magnetical fields coming together. And if we say that it interacts with energy and motion, and so we see that energy and motion coming together also has 2 magnetical fields coming head to head. Well, we've got a little bit of a problem. And so we're going to introduce inertia and say, well, that resolves the problem. Well, look closely. Head to head on the star formations is magnetical. Head to head on the ray is magnetical. So you have 4 magnetical forces coming together. How do you achieve gravitational stability? Because all of the forces are converging into the center. They have to be able to go somewhere. So clearly, if we have a magnetical interface in the inertia, then the field forces have to be gravitationally aligned back to back. So we have the gravitational field forces of the upper married to the gravitational field force of the lower via the magnetical convergence of the inertia. And that gives you gravitational stability. Okay, well, that's one example. Well, what happens if, in the previous example, we're head to head? Well, poles have to flip. And in order for poles to flip, and in order to maintain the maggrav condition, they have to have gravitational stability. So either the star formations flip or the inertia field flips. And so when we're looking at this diagram, the star formation fields head to head are magnetical to magnetical. Then the inertia field is gravitational to gravitational. Now you have gravitational stability. This pole flipping is how sugar conversion is done. And in a healthy state, sugar conversion is done aerobically. In an unhealthy state, sugar conversion is done anaerobically. So let's look at this amino chain again and see what happens. So one amino acid hooks up to another amino acid. Well, opposite poles attract. Well, this is good. And then 3 forms an amino chain. And then when you add the 4th, it has to fold over. Well, here we got the problem. It folds over. And now we're back to the same problem we had before. But the point here is that this protein has folded over with the assistance of a virus. And so we find that the virus is actually an energy pack and is essential for life. And if you find that strange, understand that this virus is in a plasmatic condition. Just like the plasmatic carbon dioxide is vital for life. And you know that's true because we breathe carbon dioxide. And if carbon dioxide is lethal to us, how can we breathe carbon dioxide and be healthy? Well, it's the same thing with the virus. This benefits us. So we find that the virus in a plasmatic state assists the folding over. And then the sugar digestion that carries on with the protein building, which starts from the amino acid and continues on, is bacteria assisted. And the difference between the virus and the bacteria is pH related. And so we see that in order to maintain the cell metabolism, we have to have a gravitational stability within the cell. So the energy has to be able to be transferred across the cell membrane. And so there's an inside, there's an outside, and there's a growth. And from cell to cell, this energy transfer becomes virus-assisted and bacteria-assisted. One being the feeder and one being the feedback. The covalent bond, the plasmatic spectrum connected to the physicality spectrum. Now we're talking about the reality dimension. Can you see the similarity? The dynamic plasma relationship, when you have this transmission from within to around yourself, this inner space field. And so when we look at the sun being a catalytic provider, we find that any other point would be in that sun space field. And so we find that all of the planets are within the solar system. And it doesn't discriminate. there are more than one planet. And isn't it odd? The planets have different numbers of moons, and that's all part of it. And then well, let's talk about the Earth planet, has a lot of people, different people. And so all of this has to do with questions about environmental modification. And the reason this becomes important is because we have to determine if it's predictable. Is it a violation of man's space, or is it an emotional relationship? And are we in a competition, our space versus some space, or our inner space versus physical space? Or is it competition between some space, inner space, as opposed to some other space, physical space? Is it a relationship between inner space and outer space? Or is it our space a transmutation to some other space? So the environmental modification becomes a form of emotional positioning. And that emotion is represented by our feeding radiance, and in turn is enhanced by the feedback radiance. So where does our soul fit in? Well, that's the essential you see, and that's the interaction between this plasma state and this matter state. But the soul of the body, well, that's the surrogate you. That is interacting between the plasma state and this environment state, the physical state. Not just your physical state, but the environment state, wherever that may be. And so we find that we aren't what we see, we are what we emit. And when you look at the vertical people, their blood is magnesium. Our blood is iron. But they operate the same way. So the magnesium is their food. Oh, so what's calcium? And so we talk about the modification of the genes of plants. Well, therefore, we can do gene modification of people. And is it enduring, or is it reversible? And that becomes a big question, because it's part of the feedback mechanisms, see. And so therefore it is reversible. It all depends on what you're feeding. And so in the case of the plants, they're being fed magnesium. And so whether it's a physical, emotional, or reproductive type of connection, there's always a connection to this family that involves a feeding and a feedback mechanism, and it affects our positioning. It's a family connection. And that's why we see that it isn't the one plus the other one as being the same one. It's another one. And so when we're looking at the choices we make as a family, we can't just say, well, it's a genetic choice, because families break up. And so if you're looking for a family, it could be the gang family or a global family, some adopted family. You know what? We're all part of the universal family. So it's time for us to really grow up and understand that all of these in-between things are all points of conflict, because they involve the difference between man-made law and universal law, and they involve a kind of prejudice. Well, if we're having racial prejudice here, would we have an earthbound prejudice versus an interplanetary prejudice? And would this interplanetary prejudice be the same as a universal prejudice? Well, there isn't a universal prejudice because we're all part of the universal family. And so that's where we have, in terms of our position, a gravitational stability. And this is a position of choice. And if we have a gravitational stability, then we have a magnetical stability. And this is one of the reasons we can go to sleep every night and have our dreams and come back in the morning. And this is done automatically. And it's really a good thing. We don't need to have a rocket to do this. And so from the dreamscape point of view, we find that the similarity between the universal community and the peace dome on the world and the cell soul within our bodies is all the same. There's a giving and taking, and there's a source of inspiration. And when you understand your position, then you understand which one's the leader, which one's the follower, and that is a changeable condition. The point of the matter is that we have already made a choice to come to the earth, and that the soul of the earth has already made the choice to accept us here. And so it's a welcome situation. And so the earth follows the same rules. And what's really interesting, the vertical people already know these rules. They're way ahead of us. Except that they make their position and they hold on to it, whereas we move out. And so we're not happy wherever we are. So this is why we're having this pursuit of happiness, because we just don't seem to understand the failure of our choices with respect to the emotional positioning. We've all preferred to come to this Earth space as opposed to the Mars space, so that's a done deal. And we haven't done this with any rockets, and we've never been into outer space with a rocket. So what we have to understand is, how do we navigate this map, this emotional position map, which is balancing off the magnetical and gravitational force fields through the reality dimension, which reflects the feeding radiance and the feedback radiance. And how do we go beyond that? And so we have to look at how we were created in the first place, and we look at the soul sequencing, which comes on our physicality after the brain, doesn't it? So if we look at the soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth, that's what attracts the soul of man. Now, where are you going? Where are you going? Oh, wait a second. I think I want to come to earth. Okay. So how does the soul of the earth find its place? Well, it has to have a relationship with the solar system and the soul of the sun. Okay, well, now that we have a soul of the earth, now with the soul of the sun, now that attracts the earth body, the soul of the earth body. Okay, now we have a place to go to, because our body wants to come somewhere. So now it can interact with the soul of the earth body and the soul of the man. Now we have a soul of the earth body. Okay, so we have two souls of the body. Where are we going? Well, we first have to have the earth, the physicality of the earth. And then we can have the physicality of the body. And that gives us a gravitational stability. So when we're looking to go to Mars, it would be interesting to see how we maintain this gravitational stability. We'll find out next month, because we still want to maintain the gravitational stability of our man space. And within this man space, we have to understand, how does this emotion affect us? And so we find that the gift of life, the sugar, is also the curse of life on this planet. And that's the difference between the plasma reality and the physical reality. And so we have to understand that. Because when we look at our man space, we find that we have a problem here. We haven't taken enough into account. We're just looking at our physical manifestation. But if we find that one is more than two, and we are none of those three, then something's missing. We have the soul of the body, the soul of the man, and the soul of the cells. Something's missing. So we have to take into account the earth. And we find that the factor with respect to the earth has to do, as far as the earth is concerned, is the silicon and the water. And so what we have is an affinity for the calcium. And so when we look at how we create the cups of life, and we see that we could create a lot of things, we find that it's affecting our emotion of position, because our dreamscape is peace and the earth's landscape is the heaven. And that's what we are. We are inherently peaceful. And so we want to be peaceful in heaven on earth. And this is where the science of the soul meets the man for peace. And so we find that the calcium is our brain food, and our heart depends on the iron, and not the physicality, but the calcium plasma and the iron plasma, because this is how we work with the plasmatic crossover with the brain, how it's affecting our heart and how it's affecting our emotion. So if you are in the gambling mood, you can place your bets now. You can bet on the emotional position, which is plasmatic manifestation. And we call that a psychosomatic effect. Or you can bet on the emotion of presence, which is a physical materialization. And there you can see the tumor effect. And so which one do you see as being the dominant one? Which one's the winner? Well, this is the problem. When we're playing these games, we play the game of hearts, and we're only looking at the emotion of presence. And of course, we see the hard hearts, the black hearts, and the faint hearts. And do we see the sweet hearts? And they say, life is a gamble, sweetheart. Well, when you go to the casino, did you know that there are two casinos? There's a casino of losers, full of one-armed bandits. Why do you think they call them bandits? It leads to poverty. There's a casino of winners. It's the plasma science. And it brings peace and prosperity. We're in the post-December 16th era of making choices, where we go from the transmutation space to the bountiful space through that graceful, sweet space. On March 24th, this is going to be for you, sweetheart. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings on Plasma Science, calling all Earth space sweethearts. Make the conscious choice that you have already made in the dreamscape. In the dreamscape, there's a World Peace Treaty. Sign it. Sign it with a pen, sign it with your heart, and sign it with your soul. And sign it with meaning and intention. Because space has overlapping fields of life choices, and they're all free from the boundaries or abuse. And when you navigate the emotional position map, let the universal community be your travel guide. We're working on this earthbound physical and emotional gravitational transformation, because we need to be stable so that we can do and cross over that transmutation connection from the transparency point to the manifestation point. So our adaptation and awareness is an inner space emotional construct. It's an emotional construct. and connects equally to the universal broadcast of inner space of freedom. So life is a real sweetheart deal. It's a deal with the universal morality. So choose wisely, dare to dream, and remember that plasma science needs to continue to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. So welcome to the outer space age. And that's the end of the lesson. I hope you all enjoyed this trip. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alex. Again, many points you've shared here. Let's see, is there anyone here for the first time that hasn't been with us? As I look through the list, I think these are all seasoned knowledge seekers, as they say. So why don't we open the floor up to any sort of questions you may have about what Alex discussed?
I'm so sorry.
No, it's
Can
fine. No,
say
no mistake.
something first?
Of course.
Okay. Maybe Alenka, you helping me? Okay.
Aló.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Sí, sí, buenas tardes a todos.
Quería hacer un comentario acerca de lo que ha pasado con y lo hago ahora porque posiblemente tenga que salir y después de Alex no alcanzaría a hacer el comentario. I'm so sorry por esto.
Un momentito.
No problem. No, take your time.
Lisbeth wants to make a commentary about what has happened, and she would like to do it right now because she will be leaving soon.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It's okay. Está
Quería
bien.
hablar sobre la experiencia acerca de lo que ha pasado, por lo menos conmigo, a raíz de la experiencia que tuvimos la semana pasada del domingo.
I would like to talk about the experience I had last week on Sunday. Adelante.
Lo que pasó en ese día fue que después no sentí hambre y vine a comer comí el sábado la última comida, que es ligera, como muy poco, a las 8:30 del sábado.
Okay. She wants to share the experience that she had last Sunday when she didn't feel any desire to eat. The last meal she had was on Saturday night. Adelante.
Okay, alrededor de las 8:30 y después comí el lunes a las 4:15 de la tarde, pero porque iba a salir a la calle y no había dormido bien.
The last meal I had was on Saturday at 8:30, and then I felt hungry again until Monday at 5, around 5. Como a las 5 dices.
4:15 por ahí, pero porque tenía que salir y no había dormido bien.
About 4:15 in the afternoon, because she had to leave and she hadn't been able to sleep. Adelante.
El miércoles propusimos durante el Soul Teaching en las privadas hacer la experiencia y conectarnos de nuevo.
On Wednesday during the Soul Teachings, we tried to connect again. Adelante.
Y entonces había comido la noche anterior, ese es mi almuerzo de hecho, como un poquito de verdura y alguna hamburguesa.
And the previous day I had a meal in the afternoon, which was really my lunch, and it was just a hamburger with some vegetables.
Y de hecho es solo verdura, ¿no? Solo verdura con ensalada, nada más.
And it was only salads with vegetables.
Y realmente no comí más hasta... de hecho, estaba el jueves a las 4:30, alrededor de las 4:30 de la mañana, durante la clase de Mr. Case, que ya sí sentí que el estómago tenía hambre. Y ahí comí algo.
And then I felt hungry again, only till the teachings with Mr. Case
Ya.
on Thursday. Sí.
Pero lo que más he notado y me ha parecido, y lo noté y hasta le comenté a mi esposo, es que generalmente, sin importar si estoy aquí en el clima de Miami o en Colombia que estaba frío, cuando me levanto, todo el tiempo estoy como si tuviera sinusitis, estoy en sniff y boto mucha mucosidad, casi a veces hasta 2 horas.
But the most important thing that she has noticed is that when she wakes up in the morning, whether she is in Miami, where it is rather warm, or in Colombia, where it is very cool, she notices that she has a lot of mucus coming from the nose, and it's as if she had some sort of
Como si hiciera sinusitis,
sinusitis.
pero yo no sé si es sinusitis. So.
But she doesn't know if it is sinusitis or not.
Pero me pasa siempre, siempre, siempre. Y te voy a decir que yo no me levanto generalmente en la mañana, sino por ahí al mediodía o así, porque yo duermo muy tarde.
And she has noticed that this happens every day, all the time. And she usually doesn't get up early in the morning, but until midday, because she goes to sleep too late at night.
Mírate que yo creo que los 2 primeros días, por ahí estuve unos 10 minutos con eso y ya noté que ya no me dio más. Esta semana no me dio más. Y
And
eso
the
lleva
first
muchos años.
this week, the first 2 days of this week, she noticed that it was more intense, and then after that she has had no more sinusitis or those mucus.
Ya no me da eso. Me levanto, no importa si está el aire acondicionado, si está el ventilador, si salgo, si entro, no me importa. Pero es que aunque estuviera dentro de casa, me daba. Y ya
And
no lo
she
tengo.
has noticed that she doesn't have that anymore, even if she's inside the house.
Y
Yes.
ya no lo tengo, ya no me da más. Y era como el
And
cambio de estar dormida a de estar despierta de inmediato.
it's for her now. It is but she notices that it is no longer. She doesn't have any sinusitis any longer. It's like getting up in the morning from being sleeping. That's a change she feels.
Eso fue lo que yo más noté, que me pareció, wow, no importa, ya no me da.
And that's the most important thing that she noticed, because she doesn't have that any longer.
Eso lleva muchos años, voy a decirte.
And she had been suffering from that sinusitis for many years.
Pero la verdad es que yo nunca me he acordado de decirle a ningún médico. Que bueno.
And
Dicen que
I have never consulted any doctor because of that situation.
no, porque se me pasa, porque cuando ya me voy a la calle ya no tengo. Ya. So,
Because she doesn't have that when during the day when she's outside or going anywhere.
así que sí noté eso y me pareció importante decirlo, porque si recordamos, Mr. Kes dijo que había absolutamente cualquier tipo de alimento que el ser necesitara en esta tierra o que estuviera acostumbrado a recibir, estaba en gas dentro de la unidad. Y todo eso pues nos ayuda a equilibrar también lo que esté pasando en el organismo.
And Elizabeth thinks that is the most important thing that she has felt, because Mr. Keshe said that all the elements and food that the body would needs would be available within the unit.
En GANS, ¿no?
In GANS.
En plasmatic condition, ya.
Or plasmatic condition.
Ya. Eso es todo y muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
That's all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Got a question for
That's
Liz.
Thank you, Alenka.
Muchas gracias, Alenka
Well-
and Elizabeth. Ricky, go ahead.
Yes, it's for Liz. 2 years ago, Liz, you started to talk to your daughter. Did you continue talking to that level, soul level, with your daughter? Thank you.
All the time.
Do you has noticed any difference with the system right now?
About what? She all the time need assistance. She always does. Because I talked with Mr. Cation, the doctor, in December during Zoom, and I asked about my daughter and observe the, what is the name? ¿Cómo se llama? Ella tiene una, a ver.
She
Le
has
vieron
a
una,
condition.
ya, le vieron una tomografía, a
She
ver,
had
en la que se hace el cerebro,
Yes, a topography.
magnética.
a
No, pero
brain
es
scan.
una resonancia, resonancia magnética.
A magnetic
Magnetic.
resonance
Ajá, del cerebro y
of the brain.
y el doctor y Mr. Case revisaron y dijeron que observaron que su cerebro solo creció hasta los 3 años. Por esta razón no se puede tratar. O sea,
And the
no
doctor
pueden ayudar
said-
porque se puede restaurar lo que existía, pero si no existía, no pueden restaurar.
The
And you
doctor and Mr.
communicate-
Fisher saw that her brain had only developed until the age of 3 years old. And because of that, there is nothing much that could be done.
Has you developed any kind of telepathy with her or any difference with the new systems? I am talking about your communication with your daughter.
¿Entiendes?
Yo la entiendo todo el tiempo y ella me
Okay.
entiende a mí. So,
She understands what I communicate to her, and I also understand her.
Thank you.
thank you, Ricardo.
Gracias.
Thank you, Elenka.
Gracias.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
Sí, he notado una cosa, bueno, no es el cambio ahora, sino que, por ejemplo, yo la invito a salir y yo veo el
I
cielo
have
despejado.
noticed
Ya, yo no veo
that.
que vaya a llover, por ejemplo, y ella llega a veces hasta la puerta o hasta la esquina y se devuelve y no quiere seguir.
What I have noticed is that when I invite her to go out, and the sky is clean and sunny, and then she goes to the door, and then she won't go out.
Y a veces se regresa aún desde un bloque a caminar o llegar a la esquina y se regresa. Y ni
And she
5
comes
minutos
back.
después empieza a llover. Ella percibe esas cosas que yo no percibo.
And she comes back maybe a block away, and a little bit later it starts raining. So I feel that she perceives that the change of weather.
Sí, pues muchas cosas así que yo veo que ella las percibe antes que yo.
So I see that she is capable of perceiving sooner than I do.
Y entendí muchas cosas cuando Mr. Case explicó que el alma del niño y el de la madre deciden muchas cosas juntos.
And Mr. Keshe had explained to us that the soul of the mother and the soul of the child perceive more when they're in common. En común, ¿verdad?
Sí, sí.
Sí.
Entonces, como que deciden la formación del alma del ser. Entonces, asumo que en algún momento las dos decidieron que ella estaría, que era su vida iba a ser así, y que a lo mejor entendieron que yo podía entender y podía aceptar y ser feliz aún así. Y ella también.
So What we have been taught that is that the mother and the child decide what the type of life will this child have in this world. And so I suppose that she and her mother decided that she would be in that state and that I would be capable of loving her and being happy with her.
Eso lo entendí, bueno, de alguna manera lo percibía, pero Mr. Case lo confirmó hace poco y entendí esa parte.
So before I could feel that was correct, and when Mr. Keshe confirmed me, then I understood that that was happening. Una pregunta.
Ajá. Dame.
Entonces, por lo que tú has dicho, tu hija es adoptada.
No, nació de mí.
Entonces entre tú y ella es que como te referiste
claro.
a la mamá.
De la madre,
no.
es que él dijo la madre y el hijo.
Oh,
en
okay.
general, ¿no?
I had a misunderstanding that the girl was adopted, but no, Lisbeth is the biological mother also. Gracias,
Yeah.
Lisbeth.
A ti. Entonces entendí muchas cosas y desde que yo recuerdo yo le he aceptado y he sido feliz y no, lo que sí he tratado de médicamente lo que tenga que hacer por ella porque es mi responsabilidad.
So when Mr. Keshe explained that, I understood it fully because I have been very happy with her, and although it requires some special attention, I am happy to give it to her.
Una cosa que quería que quedara claro, por ejemplo, que para mí quedó muy claro cuando hice el Zoom con el doctor y Mr. Cash, es que no se puede, lo que se puede hacer médicamente es lo que ya existía, construir sobre lo que existe, pero sobre lo que no existe, médicamente hablando, en este caso, no se puede reparar lo que no existe.
And what became clear to me with the interview with the doctor and Mr. Keshe was that whatever that we can repair what is existing, but we cannot create what is not existing or repair it or enhance it or in any way make it better, because if it doesn't exist, it is not possible to do it.
Sí, porque vieron que el cerebro creció hasta los 3 años, pero ella tiene 32. Me dijeron que quizá hasta entre los 12 y 15 años se pudiera hacer porque apenas estaba en crecimiento, pero ya no. Entonces entendí, es bueno aclarar, es porque muchas personas podemos esperar lo que no existe. Lo que
So,
es.
For me, it was clear when I was explained that her brain developed only until she was 3 years old, although some of it could have been changed or enhanced when she was 14 or 15 because she was still growing. Her brain was still in the age of being capable of growing. But now that she is 34, that is not possible. So I have that clear now. And I think that the people who would be expecting some things that are not possible should be quite aware that if the brain could not be developed at the age in which she could develop it, then we cannot do anything more for it.
Are you saying if the soul create the physicality, then only what the soul has been created of physicality can be repaired with this technology, right? Lizzie?
¿Entendiste?
Ya. Sí, pero por ejemplo, tú tienes una pierna y la perdiste, era parte de ti, puedes repararla. Pero tú naces sin una pierna, tú decidiste nacer sin una pierna, o sin una parte de la pierna, pasa cierto tiempo, ya tú no puedes crear esa pierna, ¿me entendiste?
Sí,
Y
sí,
en
sí, sí.
eso lo entendí claramente y es bueno para que no pensamos que estamos haciendo magia.
Ok,
Ya,
puedo
sí, sí.
traducir un momentito, por favor.
Yes, thank you.
What I want to make clear is that if you were born with a leg and then you lost your leg, you can repair that. But if you were not born with a leg, it was because you decided before being born that you were going to be born without that leg, and so you would not have a leg during your lifetime. So I want to make clear that so that there are no false expectations about it.
O
Adelante.
sea, pero después de cierto tiempo. O sea, si todavía estás en periodo de crecimiento, posiblemente esto pueda darse. Pero después
If
del periodo, ya no.
during the time of growth, it is possible that you can do something, but after that time, no, it is not possible. That is
Ahora
our
sí,
understanding.
Ricardo, ¿qué me decías?
Sí, 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 Lili, perfecto. Alguna gente nace, por ejemplo, sin un hígado, sin un riñón, perdón, y esta era precisamente por eso era mi pregunta. When you born
Some
with
people,
a kidney can be repaired, and you now I understand, maybe on the very first years can be repaired, but not after sometimes cannot be repaired because your soul or my soul had decided before I born make the way the living. Thank you.
Sí, lo entendí por esto. Si creció hasta los 3 años y si se había podido ayudar hasta que los 12, 15 años, posiblemente porque estaba creciendo aún, y ya no se puede, significa que tiene un tiempo en el cual el alma decide hasta dónde va. Si decidió hasta ese momento fue.
if she stopped growing, her brain stopped growing when she was 3, and she could have improved that during the age of 12 to 15, and she did not, then I understood that was because that was the decision of the soul before coming to this life. Adelante.
¿Algo más, Ricardo? No.
Something else, Ricardo?
No, Lizzie, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
Gracias,
thank
Ale.
you so much. Gracias,
Liz.
Alenka. And thank you so much. And thank you for the always days unifying with the Universal Council for Elevated the Souls. Not important what time, but it's okay. All the time is as needed. All people put the souls for elevate other souls. Thank you.
And thank you and all for the love of a mother for the daughter, or the love of the father for the family, and so on and so forth. But as Mr. Kesh said, there's some things they couldn't do before. They may develop things along the way where they'll learn to isolate plates or something along that line, but the time isn't right now. But thank you, Elizabeth, for your dedication, and to your daughter. I know I have a sister that was a normal child in first grade and received an injection, and then she reverted back to a 2 or 3 year old, and now she's close to 60, I think. And we know the hardship that carries and what it does to a family. But I think what we'll see in the future is some of these things can be resolved or improved, and we're hoping for this change, but we'll have to see. But thank you for the love of a mother for the daughter, and so on. Any other comments?
Thank you,
for
Mark.
Alex? Do you think it's easier, Alex, if we do it first, then we understand it, and then we can explain it? Or should we try to understand all these interactions, what we need to do, the calcium this, and then do a transmutation? I'm thinking it's going to be much easier to do it first and then perhaps explain parts of it that we're allowed to see. But I don't know if everyone's going to have to understand all these tiny, small interactions and what's going on. Maybe an overview, but again, it just seems too much for me to gain confidence that way.
You always keep asking multiple questions within your question.
Okay, you can pick one.
Okay, so we don't have the definitive how-to on how to do this, right? But
that's what
the
I'm
thing
thinking.
is,
The universal community has been trying to get to the mother or find their energy source or their soul and work with it, but maybe they have in a way, but not to the point where what we're being gifted with. And we're being
exactly
gifted
correct.
this knowledge.
That's right. That is right. And that is the proof of concept right then and there. So we can't hang our hat on stuff that we don't know. We have to hang our hat on stuff that we do know. And what we do know is that we were born and we go to sleep every night. And we were born in safety, insofar as those who are here made it safely. And those who went to sleep last night and woke up this morning did so in safety. Well, that is the same thing that we did on the various flights that we've taken over the past 3 months. Now, because it was done, we know that it's possible. Because we can't explain it, doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means that we don't know how to explain it. This is the point. And so when we try and understand something, and we understand something after the fact, that fact in our existence is in the physicality. And so what we don't understand is what happened before. And so here's the key point, that not only did we not remember before we were born, but there was a period after we were born that we still don't remember. So like, for me personally, I don't remember my existence until around the age of 3. And don't ask me if I was, just turned 3 or if I'm getting ready to turn 4. I don't know. I don't remember. But the thing is that I don't remember before that, but I certainly do remember after that. So what that means is that whatever happened before was part of me. And I must have made that choice because, first of all, I have my man space, and second of all, I made it to the earth space. So those were 2 choices. And it was done. And it was done plasmatically. And so the answer to your second question, the whole purpose of this discussion is to understand the difference between the physical manifestation and the plasmatic manifestation. And so there are certain criteria. And so when we look at our health and we say, one of the problems with our health has to do with the pH of our blood, which is affected by the sugar content in our diet, among other things. And then you see, well, that sugar is an integral component of the way we metabolize our protein. Well, how can something that is good for you be bad for you? And the reason is because one is on a feeding side, the one is on a feedback side. And so when we look at our knowledge and everything that we're doing is on the feedback side, and you wonder why we continue year after year, over thousands of years, we keep doing the same thing. Well, guess what? We keep getting the same results. And so there's the proof. There's the proof. It's not working. If you're going down the left-hand road and you've come to a dead end, it's not working. And if you keep going down that left-hand road, you'll keep coming to the dead end. Guess what? It's not working. So, like, we need to grow up. We need to make a decision. But if we go to the right side and we come into a problem, is that road a straight road, or does that road also have forks? So now we have to be skillful in our choices. And the basis of the skill of making that choice is to be clearly and concisely able to differentiate between the physical manifestation and the plasmatic manifestation. And our ability to navigate between those two is our reality dimension. And if there's anything that I want to drive the point home, that is the one single sole point that I want to drive home. We are part of the reality dimension. Now it's how we navigate in there, and we need to upgrade our skills to do that. So no, you don't need all of these individual pieces of knowledge. The reason I grabbed onto these individual pieces of knowledge is because I was sick and tired of people telling me, and especially people in responsible positions telling me, oh, I don't know, we don't know how that happens, we're still doing the research. Really? You're still doing the research. And then you go all through life, and at the end of your life, you're saying, well, I've been here all my life and I still don't know how we're doing it, and we're still doing the research. I guess, that's the end of my life, and then someone else is going to have to take over. And then the whole cycle begins again. And you say, well, that's not progress. And so I'm looking at my life and saying, when I was young, I was looking at life through rose-colored glasses and thinking, life is excellent. Look at the potential. And now I look and see the quality of our life on a social basis is worse than it was 50 years ago. It's worse. How can that be? How can you create worseness? That's ridiculous. That's like planning on losing. You don't plan. You don't have to plan on losing. You can be a loser, easy. Losing is easy. But did we have choices? And if we know it beforehand, you go to a casino and the house always wins. And yet people still go to the casino. And what boggles my mind, wealthy people go to the casino. Why? Because now they can afford to lose. Well, obviously they can afford to be stupid, because that's really what they're doing. If they can afford to waste their time going to a house of losers, then doesn't it seem that something is wrong there when you don't have the answers on how to be a winner, how to be healthy? We have all of these advocates, do this to be healthy, eat this to be healthy. Really? And we tried it all. We learned it all. We spent tons of money, tons of research, and we still don't know how we were born. Well, what's the reason for that? And so as we start to find out, we say, oh, wait a second. We're not choosing wisely, and we're not working with the universal morality. Well, is there a universal morality? When the snow melts, go out into your garden and watch the plants grow. They're not asking you permission, and they're not asking whether or not you think it's a good idea. They just go ahead and do it because they're following the universal rules.
And I could be wrong on my premise too. I remember Mr. Kesh saying that Christ and the Buddha were the only two that understood this knowledge, and the Buddha only understood it partially, but he couldn't teach it. So maybe I'm wrong in thinking we do it first and then we'll be able to teach it.
No, you're not wrong. No, the point of the matter is that if we're going to understand the plasma reality, we have to understand our emotional grounding. And when our emotional grounding is earth-centric, then we have a problem. Then we are with that little tiny pie in the sky. But if our emotional grounding becomes universe-centric, now we get the rest of the pie. And so if you want to say, well, I'm a winner because I got that piece of the pie, well, here, I'll pat you on the head and let you go on your way. I didn't think that this would be so difficult. And then why is it so difficult? Well, because there's a lot of opposition. Well, why is there a lot of opposition? Well, because everybody wants to have that piece of the pie. And you know what? When they have that piece of the pie, that is all they have. They just have that little piece. They don't have anything else. Okay? And then when they have that, it's gone. Okay, so then they have to get another piece. Well, who keeps providing the pie? That's the guy I want on my team. You understand? Because that's the guy that goes to the casino of winners. And that's how you make your choice. And we didn't know we had a choice. So up until now, my choice was to go to the casino or not go to the casino. Well, guess what? Now I'm making a different kind of bet. I'm betting on life, not betting on losers. Over to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you. But it's just amazing that he could do something, but he wasn't able to teach it. Again, maybe there was a blockage, or maybe he didn't want to teach it. I don't know. Another point you mentioned was about the robots, this artificial intelligence. Mr. Kesh said, I thought I heard him say that we're going to give them a brain cell and they're going to have emotions. And he said it wouldn't be like, can I make you a cup of coffee? It would be like, would you like me to make you a fresh, hot cup of coffee? There'll be emotion behind these robots. This is what he was alluding to. I think it was in this workshop at some place and point in time. But he said these new robots are the ones that are maybe being developed somehow in the Kesh Foundation. He said they would carry an emotion with them.
So will that be an emotion of position or an emotion of presence?
Again, I don't know, but the emotion is energy in motion. So I would think it would be not the emotion of presence, but I don't know. But he said, we're going to give them a brain cell and emotion. He didn't say the whole brain, but maybe that's what he meant. But they're going to have some sort of real touch, or you can feel the emotion within this, what you call the artificial intelligence. But maybe it won't be so artificial anymore.
No, that's true, Mark, but you need to look at the source of that emotion. Is it earthbound or is it plasma bound?
Can I say something here?
Hi there.
Anyone?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi. Oh, long time I wasn't here because I went to Bangladesh and then came back. How long we are born here and how long ago the earth born here? Did we ever thought about that? And then, yes, somebody wants to say something.
No, please carry on.
And then, a lot of people who were born before us and their technology and our technology. Our technology, we are making robot right now, right? And we are thinking about give emotion. So thousand years ago, which planet are born and people are advanced than us, what can they do? And why don't we think we could be like a robot too? Because look at our life. Our life totally is programming, isn't it? Everything is programming. And we are finding out right now everything ourselves, everything. So who is the creator? And I don't know. I don't want to say so, about that. But sometimes I think the creator is the giant computer and we are the program. And program making programming again and again and again. Like what is we say? Like 3D printer. Sometimes I feel like that. I think like that way. But before I used to know. But right now, when I think deeper and deeper, then I feel everything is created by creator, and that is the giant computer, and we are the program. I don't know. But I want to talk today about something else. Can I talk about my dream? I already told about the dream, but I want to repeat the dream again. Can I, Mark?
Well, yes. Are you still calling it a dream?
Yeah, it was dream. Like a few months ago, I told you the dream about the dream. Is I think so. Right now, we need to hear again the dream because everywhere is balloon and everything is going on. So I think maybe that dream is related to that. There was some message. I think so.
You mean when you were in the kitchen cooking? That
No,
one?
no, no,
A
no,
different
no,
one.
no.
Okay.
No, kitchen cooking is that is a different thing. It's like vision. A lot of stuff happened in my life, so I can say everything. But that was the dream. The dream was like that. I am living in the complex, like a big area with a lot of houses. Those kinds of thing in here. So those kinds of house. So I woke up in the morning in the dream and then opened the door, front door, and went to the front yard. And then I I saw in the sky, I see in the sky there is a bright day, very bright day. There is 3 python snake, big, giant. Not like a regular python. It's like a 6, 7 python keep together is making one python, like that kinds of big. In the it's like a cloud, or like a holograph or projection. In the we do the projection TV, like those kinds of stuff in the sky, in the
Okay, so you saw several pythons intertwined in the sky
3,
together.
3.
Three.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I was seeing, and suddenly the python dropped in the floor, in the ground, and then they gone different way. And then again I saw other place in the sky, and there is same pattern, same kind, same way. The other 3 python is there, other place. So that time I understood that was hologram or maybe projection. They're doing somebody doing something in the sky, or they're fake. Originally they're fake, they're not real. So that snake fall too is everywhere, those kinds of picture, and then falling from the sky. So suddenly I felt like that my neighborhood, I need to go every house to find out the children are safe or not, so they have food or not. So I'm knocking everybody's door, and and then children open the door, all houses. Children open the door, and there is no older people, no parents, no uncle, aunt, no grandparents, nobody. Only children, little children, like 12 and less than 12 years sibling, small children. So I'm asking them, do you have, are you okay, guys? And they say, yes, we are okay. The children acting like older people. Yes, we are okay. And I'm asking them, do you have food in home? And they say, yes. And I say, can you cook for your youngest brother and sister, for those children? Like 3, 4 years, I saw those children too in the home. Maybe 10, 12 to 3, 4 years, those kinds of children. And then I'm asking, can you cook for your youngest one? And they say yes. They're acting like old people. They know something. So I'm going every door to door and asking everybody. And then when I near to the complex, you know that there is a big door, big road. Every complex, they have a close to big road, right? So those area. And then I came out from one house and walking the sideway from inside my complex. So suddenly I saw there is a cartoon parade, like the 10, 12 story building high cartoon character, like Scooby-Doo, and then the other cartoon, the big head, big body, small skinny hand and leg, those kinds of cartoon. They are parading in the street, a long parade going. Suddenly one woman, there is a car, and then cartoon character is laying down in the car, hanging her feet and hand, and going. And then suddenly she saw me, and then she screamed, and it's like if you fit 3, 4 mic or 10, 5, 10 mics and you scream, those kinds of sound is very loud, and it shook my heart. I didn't I didn't scare them. I know they're fake, but I scared about their noise. I thought maybe all character together, if they scream, the whole sky gonna fall. So I came a little bit sideways, and I'm hiding a little bit. I'm thinking maybe nobody is gonna see me. And my feeling was that time, it was, how dare you? You are fake, you are cartoon, and it's laughable. And then I'm mad too. All emotion together. All emotion together. I know they're fake, but they did something. And then suddenly I woke up. So that was my dream. But now, few days, when I saw the balloon and other stuff happening here and there, that time I thought maybe something going to be happen or trying to be. So that thing, and the other thing, there was no older people in the home. What happened there? Some I am worried about that. I don't know how to explain, how to say, but there is something I feel is related or not. We hope not, but we are, that's why I'm saying we are highly programmable people. So we need to reduce our program. Too much happened, too much happening. So that's it.
Okay, well, we can easily be fooled in space, as I understand it, and this is what Mr. Kesh is helping us to understand here, probably, and in space as well, that we don't get fooled so easily. Otherwise, we'll get co-opted into someone else's structure. I think on our way back to the creator, and he said that he didn't want us to fall for any of these magicians that we may meet, and apparently you're going to meet some magicians along your journey, maybe
Yes.
many magicians, and we're going to have to be able to determine, as you did in your dream, that they were just cartoon characters or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
That's a good point, Mark. When you look at the amino chain, if you were to add the fourth one and it wouldn't fold over, then it would be a polymer, which is a emotionless, lifeless type thing. And so, we're talking about plastics, we're talking about manufacturing. And so that becomes the replication in a string, if you can picture that. So it's the folding over the amino chain, which creates the protein, and the protein is part of the building blocks of life. Now, one of the things that we have been able to do is with the GANS technologies to create this protein. But again, what I need to emphasize is that the GANS production has an affinity to the emotion. And so there's an emotion of position and emotion of presence. And one has to do with the feeding, one has to do with the feedback. And the thing is, the feeding is coming from the soul side. And so that is benevolent and it's true. The feedback coming is from the environmental side and can be altered. And so when we're talking about the emotion of a robot is basically a replication, and it's more than three. So it's in the physical state. But if it were to have the emotion, it would, in order to exist, it would have to have the emotion of the creator. If it had the emotion of the physicality, so you have to understand that the robot was created in the process of accounting for and discounting for certain things. So in other words, deciding what's part of the robot and what's garbage. And so frankly, the robot would have to make that same decision. And if you become part of the discount, right, everything else that was taken away was garbage, and so you're what's left over, you're the residue, then that's how you're going to think. And so in that basis, some people think, well, the robot is going to do your bidding, and your bidding is going to be based on what you intend. Well, the thing is, the intention of creating the robot has been from a point of diminished resources. And so if we give it a motion, we give it a motion from the point of enhanced resources. And so if we realize that we have a program within us that is coming from the point of enhanced resources, why would we want to be a robot? So those of us who choose to be, shall we say, in a kind of dependent state, welfare state, or a position of irresponsibility, we're actually diminishing our capabilities, and those capabilities were gifts that we received. So why would we want to diminish our gifts? Why would we choose to go with the least, return, the lowest common denominator? There's a big difference between a common denominator and the lowest common denominator. And you don't need to gravitate to the lowest common denominator because you're going to a lower energy state. So can you gravitate to a higher denominator? Well, yes, of course. You can transcend the various energy states. And within each energy state, you can have a gravitational point. And so if the idea with that gravitational point is to be stable and to be able to emit and absorb energy. And it has to do this in a graceful way, a benevolent way. And so if you are created from a point of lack, well, you're certainly not going to want to create more for the other because you've been created from the lesser. Right? If I am the weakest of the bunch, am I going to want to help someone else out and make them stronger? Because I'm already the weakest of the bunch. So why would I want to create someone who's, again, stronger than me? I'd want to create someone who's weaker than me. And that's what these power-hungry people in the physical state are doing. They are actually creating people who are weaker. And as a result, they weaken themselves too. And I don't want to make a commentary on that. It's obvious. But the point being that if you want to be strong, you need to surround yourself with strong people. And the strength of these people has to come from energy from a higher source. And so this is the motion that we're imparting to the robots would be from a higher source. And so that source would be benevolent. And so in the process of serving, the process would be to serve based on intent. So that intent would be for the purpose of life giving, not life controlling, not life mitigating or life ending. So, when we talk about the MAID system here in Canada, medically assisted infant death, you're giving assistance. Anyway, that's a mouthful right there, isn't it? The point of the matter is that we have to differentiate between the physical dimension and the plasma dimension. We need to be skillful in that, and we need to be quick when we make that decision. And so all of these things that I'm talking about, in a way, it's fluff. But if you want to investigate that, what it does is it gives you proof of concept. In each and every case is a proof of concept. So for me, the proof of concept was I found out what caused cancer, and that had to be with the alteration of the blood serum pH and the anaerobic aspect of sugar metabolism. Okay. No one ever told me before, and no one talks about it really in the medical community. Okay, well, that's fine. except that, you know, they're still looking for a cure for cancer and I'm not. So that's the difference. And then, so I don't need to question if I'm right or if I'm wrong. That's not the point. The point is that, you know, I've stopped looking. But now what I'm saying, well, where does that energy come from? And so we find that the energy comes from the plasma universe. Okay, so we always have new fields to understand. And so as expert as we could be in whatever field that we're in, if we explore another field, we suddenly become a novice in that field. And so we have to remember the method of learning. And in the process of understanding how we learn, we understand how we teach. So this kind of answers your other question. And so if we're missing things in terms of our basic foundation of our knowledge and the way that we can relate, it's very difficult to bridge the gap. So if you're working in a plasma reality and you want to try and explain that in English, which is a physical reality, then you want to relate to something that's in a physical reality. And so that is very, very difficult. So then you see phrases like, you know, chariots of fire. What is a chariot of fire? Well, obviously it's a rocket ship, isn't it? But what do people know about rockets? They know about fire. So, and they know about carts and chariots and stuff like that. And so that's how they relate to it. But, you know, if you were to tell them to a rocket, well, they don't know what a rocket is. And so this is the problem. It's a problem of terminology. Well, we have a whole new set of terminology that we have to go into. We have a whole new set of vision that we have to go into. Because clearly within our spectrum, we have different rays. We have different colors. The colors of the rainbow and infrared, ultraviolet, and beyond into the invisible spectrums, the X-rays and the gamma rays. So we have so much more to learn. And that's the target, isn't it? So now we need to target practice. Over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Right, and now, as Dean alluded to about this plasma soul generator, again, a huge game changer. He's saying this is so huge, it generates nothing but fields of the soul of the creator. And we're going to play this 8-minute clip before we go today, but this is, he said this should make you more humble in so many ways, but it's going to bring a huge change and mature the man that nobody can fool you in space. He said one unit already exists, and I guess they're creating a second unit, but he's talking about to interact with other souls. Many will raise the dead, no illness, no ill intentions. And this is a gift of thousands of years from the Keshe Foundation. I know Dean said that all you had to do was touch it and it would become part of you. Of course, if you abuse it, he said it would disintegrate, I think, your civilization or something along this line. But we can hear that before we close today. Would someone else like to come forward? I see Dean has something to say.
Thank you, Mark. So I just had some thoughts listening to what Alex and everything was speaking about. And so my thoughts would be that when a soul is in space or in a position, it will do anything to find some company. So it creates a second soul. So imagine that position where a soul comes to the planet Earth and then creates another soul to be present with. Was there a language? Was there any interactions at all in the first instance? And that formulation of the two souls, let's say the creator Mitra, would it then double itself again and keep adding, doubling and doubling and doubling? And then with each doubling of itself, each replication, then you get this communication filtering that starts to develop. And then it goes down different paths and goes down into different realms of interactions, field strengths. And then language and everything else starts to come into a certain group that's been been replicated. And then it builds and builds and builds. And then there's an old saying in English that says that where there's muck, there's brass. So what this means is basically when you pile enough up, somebody else will make a profit from it, well, whatever it is. And whether it's physical profit or it's a profit in another way, it becomes something that somebody can then take an energy from and use it to enhance themselves and enhance their credibility, their finance. Again, that's going into language. But if we take it, but if we just keep going back on the energy flow of what we really are, then the replications, this unit that we just spoke about, Mark, is like coming back to the original souls that didn't have the wrong intentions. They didn't have this this constant filtering process and constant replication that has created all these different emotions and interactions with all the carbons and everything else. And it's just gone on and on and on. And then we get to a position where that some that turn the muck into brass are suddenly at the top of the pile. And then we say, yes, yes.
Hold your thought.
Okay.
I was going to say, oh, go ahead.
The difference between virus and bacteria.
Yeah.
How do they determine it?
One's man-made, yeah. Well, the ones here anyway. Or one's come. It's a field strength. You know, it's an energy pack.
Okay, you just threw a handful of darts. Listen, okay. One is filterable, one is non-filterable.
Mm-hmm.
So the virus is so tiny they can't filter it, and that's how the medical community is structured. Now we're going one step further and we'll say, okay, well, there's a plasmatic reality and a physical reality, and so there's a difference between the physical virus and the plasmatic virus as well. I just wanted to add that point because of the choice of words.
Yeah, okay. It's funny how when we start speak, any of us starts to say something with language, it then brings this emotion that and your understanding forward into the focus, and then you take it and reposition it to what you understand, and then I have to adjust to that. And this is what humanity and this is what the souls have been doing. So this is my point, was coming back to that unit was the true soul that is now been replicated once more, that it touches the essence of creation. And within that, when the first souls were present, when they were present in let's say they come into the physicality, when they were in perfect harmony with the environment and everything else, everything was, you know, the garden. It was, you know, the way it should be. And you didn't need to take energy in any other form. It was provided within the environment for you to enjoy. Now we've got to a position where we've turned that on its head and we've replicated so much that it's like you said, it's the filtering, it's the virus, it's in a condition now that we've added so many layers and so many contradictions that we're now confusing ourselves with contradictions upon contradictions. The essence of the technology takes us back to origin. It takes us back to the soul aspect, which is there is nothing. It's pure energy. However you want to describe a soul, it's just the origin of the creation of the creator. And by touching these units, you're going to experience that again, and that goes into all the teaching that Mr. Kesh has been going into, and you've gone into, Alex, extensively, that we are from the creation. We're part of it, and we're a soul that's having an experience in a physicality, and the soul aspect is multidimensional and in every point and place in time in this precise moment. And we are then, once we touch that unit, which is, we can touch it right now with our thoughts and intentions. We could let's go to wherever you like to be. If I could find the reference points where you are right now, Alex, I could if I could reference it enough, I could be there. I'm with you. I am you. You're me, and I have a part of you, and you have a part of me. So if I can reference it, I can become that filter that walks through into that energy, into that soul aspect. And that's what we're trying to achieve and we're doing in these moments. One more thing I'd like to say, if I can, Mark, just before I sort of close it up.
Right. I thought, Dean, you were gonna tell us you're from Ireland because you kept saying Dublin, Dublin, Dublin.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, very good, Mark. No, I'm not from Ireland. So one thing I was going to say, so this week we've been invited to go back from Monday to Friday during the week. So that's from the 27th of February to the 3rd of March, from 4 o'clock till 7 p.m. CET, to continue with the same experience. So the session will be open to you to come in and take the energy of which food you would wish during this time, for a maximum of 30 minutes per person per day. So we're going to be experiencing this energy flow, touching the creation, touching the soul aspects, receiving the energies over a wireless device, or over a structured device that man has made. However, the plasmatic superhighway of the nano coating that is ourselves, and the structure that we then use to touch to the systems in Linz and then on to the creation, is we're opening that up again, and we're going to be feeding and experiencing the energy flow from this condition, this universal condition that is present on the planet. It's in everything that there's part of, which goes back to the first initial bit that I said. When the first souls came, they had all the energy they required in that moment. But the moment we started to add to it and started to become more and add more souls, and which turned into the physicality, then it got more and more convoluted, and it changed the structure. So within the environment that has a certain elements that had a certain field strength, that when we went into physicality, and then there was a certain lack of, changed all the biological features of us. And as Mr. Kesh would say, each of our bodily entities are, they're very much the same as the moon and the sun. They all have a place and time and position, and they all replicate the same structure as a universe. So what I'm trying to say is, we're going back to when we touch the essence of the soul and this unit, then we are basically coming back to this one soul. We're coming back to the origin of everything, and we will experience once again being part of a much bigger picture. Whether that picture is on Earth, for some it will be, they just want to stay within this sphere, and that's fine. Others will want to venture out further, but that is a soul, that's a choice and an interaction that, when we start to receive this energy on a soul level, I think many of us will, when we touch the creation, we understand it, and we really do. Then in that moment, that flick of a second, we understand, and then things change. Then you can come back into physicality and serve, because then you realize that there really is only service to others, because that's the whole point of creation. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Dean. Yes, as you said, we're teaching the knowledge of creation, not the knowledge of the Kesh Foundation. We're
We
just
are
a
indeed.
name, he said.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Alex, for a wonderful teaching today. Thank you.
I think Selena
Wow,
wanted to.
that was beautiful, Jean.
Yeah. Everything is emotion. Everything. Everything within us. Everything.
It is emotion, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, these plasma soul generators should make you more humble. This is the new system that I guess they have one built and they're going to build another one, and he may even embed it into the headphones, and then he's saying, do we even need headphones? So again, many surprises coming up.
In Bangla teaching, a lot of time I say, I am inside God, and then God stay inside me. So what is the connection? Emotion. That is all. Simple, easy, and that is all.
So when we touch these units, we're going to balance the emotion and then experience everything that you sense, know as a soul.
Yes. Oh, another thing. I went to the what is that lens? Moshpek told me to you can come, and then I went there. I project my emotion in there like 45 minutes. In the floor of the lens, where people sit in the chair outside from the machine, in the floor, in the middle of the floor, I lay down in there 45 minutes. But I didn't go there to eat. But I went there to build energy in there.
You connected. You just you received
you.
what you need.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there more? Anyone else? Or Dean, did you finish? Selena?
No,
did
I'm
you
finished. Thank you,
finish?
Mark. Thank you all. I'll let somebody else have that.
I'm finished too. Thank you. Thank you all. And Alex is really excellent teaching today.
Thank you. I'm finished as well. Thank you all for allowing me to present.
Okay, it's approaching midnight. As I said, we're going to play about an 8-minute clip, and then we'll play the New Tomorrow by Lisa. And again, this is what he's delivering. So, and the final disclaimer, and the meeting will end. Would anyone like to add anything else? Thank you all for joining today. Thank you for bringing the change. We know there's many public and private sessions within the foundation. You can look on the social medias for those, or in the schedule if you're a private student. I know the time will change, I think, in 2 weeks. I think it's March 11th. We're actually going to move ahead of CET maybe for a week or so. So, but we'll put it in there because we're moving into the spring, and so we're going to move the clocks forward an hour. So this program will still start at 7 p.m. CET time, but depending on your location, the time may change for you, or actually be a little later, perhaps. So just keep that in mind, that that's coming up. And of course, that'll affect other meetings just for those 7 days or 5 days or how many days it is. And maybe they're going to change simultaneously this year. I don't know. But I know in the United States, we'll move forward on March 11th. Okay, Alex, I'm going to share the screen. And we're going to bring the a small teaching about a very, very huge. I mean, he said this is so huge, this soul or plasma soul generator. we're going to have to find out more. But humbleness is one of the things it should produce. But we'll hear Mr. Kesh as he described it in the and again, before we go there, just remember you can sign up for Dining with the World Leaders. And it's right here, Elevating the Soul of World Leaders for Peace, March 24th. The prices stayed the same at €250 plus $50. So sign up early and enjoy the session. This should be on a Friday, I believe it is. And normally they take place at noon CET time. So again, adjust your schedules, but many, many other things going on. And this is the key, one of the big keys, Mr. Kesh said, is how the Universal Council, and it's their obligation to be there. So keep them in mind in your thoughts and prayers and elevations. Okay, let's go to the 474 and hear a little bit what Mr. Kesh was describing about this plasma soul generator, which Dean has alluded to in a number of times today. And hopefully we'll have a little bit more understanding of it.
Seated on each floor, each level, certain fields from the center which weakens in one dimension and strengthens in the other works. One will be looking black and one looking like Chinese. If you look at the race of the man, accepting the philosophy and theology of today, that the race of the man is started from Central Africa and expanded out, wow, you should understand what your soul has done to humanity. You came out, went that way, the ultimate color and race on the right has become Chinese looking. You came up and went the other way, you became blonde and blue on the other side. But in essence, you all came from the same. And from this same of Central Africa, you came from the central soul of the Creator. How many times in the course of billions of years, this has divided? But in essence, comes from the same. Now you understand, in the world, in the teaching of the Keshe Foundation, there is no place for theology, as the theology is part of the creation of the physicality, of the science of existence. No one can fool you. In the time when not educated enough, when it goes to space, when you see somebody from this race here and this race here and that race there, oh, I know where you come from because the field at this place was stronger, so you should look like this and this and that. We start recognizing condition of the interaction of the field of the universe and the position dimension of the manifestation. Though we have no choice but to become the observers of the universe and the givers to it by path, by line, by understanding of the totality. And this will become as part of the work of the Keshe Foundation in time to come. Now today, for the first time, we talk about the order of the universe with you and the rest of it. Now I have to create that order for you to smell, to understand, to see, to trust, to go to the next level of understanding. The whole structure of the teaching is a teaching of the knowledge of the Creator, not the Keshe Foundation. We are just a name. Appeared in the name of everything which you have seen in your life. From Jesus, from Moses to Tesla. It's all the same essence. All to bring man to the point of today, that man can open his eyes to the rest of the creation. and become a passenger of the universe, to understand how the universe works, who carries, who takes a piggyback, and who actually is the owner. It's for you to become the judge of it, not for us to create another court to judge. As I said, when the man is by the ethos of Mitra, there will be no courts, because man judges himself. When you go into the depth of the knowledge of the creation, you don't need any intermediary, because you can analyze it yourself. You can break it open. You can understand it. And then it gives you freedom. It gives you no prejudice, and not being prejudiced is a freedom which man needs in the space to be able to live. You came here years ago to find a UFO. Now you found your soul. A faster, zero-time transportation communication. And this is not what you bargained for, because you were happy with the donkey of your. Your gift is given. It's for you to understand it and to, in a way, add to it from what you receive, that it becomes a creator of the next cycle. As I said very recently, we had what we call Corona children. Many people had Corona children because they were sitting at home and now had nothing to do, and they created cronies. And as I said to a knowledge seeker, now we have the children of Mitra. Many knowledge seekers are conceiving children to create the cycle of Mitra, as the time is for it. But which child will carry that essence is a gift from the soul of the parents, and not chances of life. We will see this generation coming up, and with them they know each other, recognize each other, are created from the soul, and does not matter if the eye is Chinese, black or white. They see through the soul. They carry no prejudices, and are ready to be the what we call citizens of the universe, not citizens of the village of the earth. The cycle of life does not matter where in the universe, it's the same. It's for the citizens of it to understand the culture of it and the way it came to be, and respect it. Thou shalt not kill. Is not to kill another man, which was interpreted by now. Thou shalt not kill an animal. Thou shalt not kill another citizen of this planet. Thou shalt not kill another citizen of the universe. Because thou knows how to tap into the energy without killing. That's the whole message. Thou shalt not kill. Because thou will have the understanding and the knowledge that does not need to kill. We fulfill the promises in the true essence of it, and not just by the word and verb of it. Because you know how to tap into the energies of the universe, you came to the center, you saw and you went and you swam with the fishes, and you saw the ex-husbands and the present husbands and the future husband and everything else. Because you was not you, it's the soul of you who showed you the path. This is what is to come. This is what we try to expand into energy. This is how in the coming time I show you how to convert carbon 14 into carbon 12 and back to 14 that you live. Astral Nation today, at this moment, has made access and developed what we call the machine which can create the solar plasma. Solar plasma generator is in our hand, has been made physically. And it works And it will work exactly in the essence of interaction of the soul without the matter state coming into it. Now that our knowledge seekers have understood this, you will see even the enhancement units will change in the next few weeks. Because we have managed to access to teach our knowledge seekers to create the first soul plasma creator. The soul generator is with us, and it's not that you can do anything with it. The only thing you can benefit by it is to elevate your soul to be able to interact with other souls without physicality. Many of you will rise the dead the same as Christ did, because you touch the soul. Physicality is just a gimmick. And those who built it the first time, they have felt it, the strength of it, the emotion of it, and the truth about it. Then there shall be no illness amongst the children of the man, and there will be no ill intentions amongst the children of the man. In our knowledge seekers, understanding and accessing this new technology, already the next generation of the enhancement plasma unit has gone into operation to be built. It's a leap of centuries, thousands of years of research from now. Man would not have achieved this even coming another hundreds of years. It's a gift for the sincerity of people who work with us. And you benefit because of their sincerity and the way it has worked. Plasma soul generators are so powerful that once man holds them in his hand, will see the Creator's dimension of creation and the power which it carries. Only a fool will be memorized, and a fool will abuse. This should make you more humble and, in a way, obedient to the laws of the Mitra and nothing else. It's not where we talk. Now we have developed the technology which creates carbon-14 as the strength of the soul without the conversion of the physicality of the man, conversion from carbon-12 to the essence of the creation of its base, which is the hydrogen. In a way, we have created for the first time a system which generates nothing but fields as the strength of the soul of the Creator. Those who hold it understand its power and majesty. Those who abuse it will see the annihilation of their race. As simple as that. And once you touch it, it'll stay with you and it becomes accessible to the fields of the universe. In the next few weeks, we show you this system.